What's going on, people? Myke C-Town here. And so this was originally going to be another episode of the wrap-up where I'd planned to cover like 3 or 4 albums in total. I had the albums all picked out in mind, ready to go, and I was going to start the video with this particular album. And I don't know, when I was re-listening to it and I got about 3/4 of the way through the album, I looked down and saw that I already had like 3 pages worth of notes. And I tried to slim it down and remove shit, but that just stressed me out, and I just eventually decided to say, the hell with it. I will just give this one its own video. I just didn't want the video to be incredibly long. I'm still planning on talking about those other albums because I really want to talk about those other albums. I'm just going to do that in a different video. Hopefully that'll be out maybe next week. I know I say that and then it comes out like 6 months later, but I'm planning on doing that second wrap-up video sometime next week. So keep an eye out for that. But yeah, I believe that this is the first solo review I've done where it's just one album since I left Dead End. I'm not sure what that says about this album or what that says about me, but yeah. So yeah, today I am talking about the newest Billy Woods album, Golliwog. Not sure if I'm pronouncing that properly. I don't think I've ever heard the word said out loud, but let's go ahead and get into it, man. This album starts off with Jump Scare, and this one is produced by Still Tip Dove, who has been on a streak lately, but I love the progression of this beat, the sparse drums, the thick bass, and the sounds that are moving in and out of the beat. They just give it this incredibly eerie feel. The dead don't speak to the living, something not for us to know. The dead drift like empty boats. My people fled to the mountains, but it's nowhere the white man won't go. There's a reference to Cecil Roads earlier in the song, and Cecil Roads was an Englishman who was known for colonizing South Africa, so you can take this part in particular as a reference to peoples of color trying to escape oppression, genocide, etc., but there's nowhere the white man won't go. I don't think that this means simply white people will follow, but more so the racism and the oppression that white people bring with them is what follows. But either way, this is a great line. The English language is violence. I hotwired it. I got a hold of the master's tools and got dialed in. I am absolutely in love with this line. I feel like it can mean a reference to people from England, as he's referencing English colonialism earlier, but it can also mean the language that came with them, the English language itself. I love how he references the idea of hotwiring this language. As we know, this was essentially a language that was forced on African people or descendants of African people. But now a lot of us, including Woods, are using it to our own purposes and advantages. And one of those purposes is to speak out against these colonizers. Want to talk about Star 87. This jumped out at me because I think this is the first time that Woods and Conductor have worked together. I don't know why I never thought about how I needed this collaboration until now, but you know, that's just kind of the way it goes. But this beat is beautiful, like the drums, and I love those bass lines that Conductor uses here. And there's this almost horror movie sounding like violin or cello that just works so well here. And of course, Woods sounds great here, and of course, this line jumps out at me. Rigor mortis on the cordless mic, like in Memoriam, cite my sources, Anti-Pop Consortium, co-flow in every line of accordion. Anti-Pop, Company Flow, MF Doom. Like that's my fucking hip hop DNA at this point. My God, Waterproof Mascara. Like, this song epitomizes one of the reasons I love Billy Woods. First off, the production by Preservation is lovely, okay? Sounds like the backdrop to a haunted house. I love the bass hits, the really subtle bass hits, the doom, doom, doom. And I love the ooh sound. You know, I feel like some producers could try to use these sounds and it would end up sounding really cheesy, but this works so perfectly well. And it might actually be my favorite beat on this album. And I'd known a little bit about Woods' relationship with his father through interviews. I'm pretty sure, but I didn't know a lot, of course, but I can highly relate to this song. You know, hearing his mother cry and wishing, I assume, that his father would die, and then being kind of bugged out, you know, when it actually happens. I can relate to that 100%. You know, there were many times throughout my childhood where I wanted the same thing for my pops, but it was a mindfuck when it actually happened. You know, you almost wonder as a kid if you brought this shit on, which gives you this odd sense of guilt, right? Which is something really crazy for a child to have to wrestle with. Sometimes it's all you can do not to do it, like Sylvia Plath. What a line, right? Those of us that read The Bell Jar, you know, we know. You know, every sad goth read that shit in high school, but she was a brilliant writer who unalived herself at the age of 30. And, you know, yeah, he's right here. You know, sometimes it's all you can do not to go the same route because shit can be so hard. But that whole second verse is just crazy good, man. The part about watching a slave cry for his master and waiting for him to drop the charade, you know, it shows just how great of a writer Woods is. And listening to this album, I was waiting for The Alchemist to show up, man. And he does on Counterclockwise, and he shows his ass, man. I love how mellow but intricately interesting Alchemist production here is, man. The beat is just great. It really sounds like a piece from an old jazz club. And I'm not all the way sure what Woods is talking about here, but it feels like he's describing a terrifying dream that he's having. Then Woods has the absolute audacity to follow that up with some LP production on the song Corinthians. And this beat is super ill, okay? Especially the way it progresses. I really love the kind of spacey ambient piece at the start and then how it comes in with the drums. And it's such a different beat that you may not expect that LP did it when you first heard it. And you may actually be surprised that it's him, but I can easily pick an L beat out from the crowd by the drum break. And this definitely has those LP drums. And Woods' verse here is just incredible, but I really appreciated this part. If you never came back from the dead, can't tell me shit. 12 billion USD hovering over the Gaza Strip. You don't want to know what it costs to live, what it costs to hide behind eyelids. I don't exactly get the first part of it, but I take it as people acting like death ain't a big deal or kind of downplaying the deaths of other people. But if you ain't never done it and come back from it, then you can't really tell me it's not a big deal that people are dying, especially when you factor in how our government is spending billions of dollars to assist in the tens of thousands of deaths of the people in Gaza, you know? And I love the idea of how much it costs to hide behind eyelids or to essentially close your eyes to what's going on or to stay ignorant to the events that are happening. I think this is a really interesting way to put this. And Despot's verse is just incredible as always, just reinforces the feeling of being robbed that we don't have an album from him yet. But I love that Despot and Woods decided to work together again. Where we going all depends on what I pretend that I believe. When I finally meet my maker, I'll have something up my sleeve, and I'll find out if the God above me bleed the same as me, cause I'm tired of calling out for him and falling on my knees. Maquila Dores was a very interesting song to me. I wasn't familiar with Frantz Fanon prior to this, but I looked him up and he was a philosopher who related the struggle and trauma that colonized, oppressed, and marginalized peoples go through to the process of amputation. This idea of having to accept that you're not your whole self. You know, you're part of what you could and should be. And I find this to be an incredibly interesting idea. But working this into a song was really dope. And I was also not familiar with Al Divin. Forgive me, no disrespect, but I'm not sure if that's how you pronounce their name, but I really like how they sounded on this verse, man. They had really good mic presence and their voice is super cool on the mic. And of course, I think Woods sounded great here too. I like how he pursues this idea of the amputee and how that relates to racism. And I really love how he explores the idea of amputees being told to accept the loss. The amputee says accept it. There's no escaping except the prosthetics. I feel like we can read a lot into what the prosthetics part of that means. But yeah, moving on, I also really love the somber backdrop that Omak and Saint Abdullah give with the static and the twisted vocal sample, the piano. It is just perfect. And, you know, I'm a huge fan of these guys, and I would have never thought of them working with Billy Woods until now, and it's so incredibly good. And the way it transitions out with the sax and the beautifully sung vocals, it's glorious. Okay, and the way that rolls into A Doll Full of Pins with the sax is just so good. It's so good that I was actually amazed to see that these two songs were done by different producers, as Doll Full of Pins was produced by Jeff, Myke, and Messiah Music, and they rolled into each other so seamlessly. Okay, and I felt the same way about how Doll Full of Pins rolled into Golgotha. It's just so good. And Messiah Music produced Golgotha, so he kind of just continued that kind of vibe so well. I thought Born Alone was a really good one as well. I really like the almost out of tune piano sample that Kenny Siegel used in the beat. It's really dope. And I like how in the first verse, the way Woods describes the paranoia of potentially dying any day that he decides to leave his house, right? Especially the way he describes how they found his cousin with the one shoe on and the one shoe off, you know, which made the final part of the verse really deep, because he's saying how he rocks a clean pair of socks every day just in case. Lead Paint Test was a song that I was really looking forward to when I first saw the track list. Apparently it was a single, which I don't remember this. I somehow missed this, but yeah, Woods, Elucid, and Cavalier on the same track over some dark and jazzy Willie Green production. That was exactly what I needed out of this song, man. And those DJ Mo scratches was the icing on the cake. So shout out to DJ Mo Nichols. And Elucid kicked it off beautifully, man. Like, I feel like this kind of production is really his wheelhouse. You know, it's almost made for him, right? But he says, with a smile fit for homegoing, playing dumb but we all knowing. Yeah, you gotta think about that one for a minute. And Cavalier has become one of my favorite rappers out today. Like, every verse he lays down, I walk away with something extremely poignant and moving. But these lines really got me. These ain't pains, these the regular aches. My mom slaved cause she said ownership was breaking the chains. Me and my father's main bond was that day we cursed out pigs at our gate. The part about his mom slaving in order to break the chains, I just think the wordplay here is absolutely stellar. And the part about bonding with his pops over a mutual dislike of cops, or even if it's just, you know, a dislike of cops in that particular moment, I feel like this was just really touching. I'm not exactly sure why, but even if it's just a matter of you and your pops not having a regular bond, but in that moment, y'all saw eye to eye enough to realize who the central enemy was. I don't know. There was something about the way he put that. I thought it was a really, really, really dope line. And Woods' verse was really touching as well, especially his take on familial trauma. If these walls could talk, they might not. After all, we don't. One door been locked since when? Why is never said, but we know. We know. If these walls could talk is a pretty common phrase to discuss all the things an inanimate object has seen, and all the secrets that it holds, you know. And I love how Woods personifies the walls and says how even if they could speak, they probably wouldn't, because the people themselves don't either. You know, the people in that family have secrets, and they've been secrets for a really long time. And even if that reason isn't said out loud, everyone knows why that secret is kept. You know, I feel like all families have some element of this going on, but it was a really dope way to put it. But I'm gonna stop blabbing there. Overall, I think this is yet another amazing Billy Woods album, a hip-hop album packed to the top with incredibly dense and vivid lyricism, it's pretty much what we come to Billy Woods for at this point, you know. But I think what sets this album apart a bit from the others is the really interesting production choices. You know, I think everyone showed up to provide a really unique backdrop for Woods to rhyme over. And what's really dope here is the vibe of the album is very dark, you know, but the producers don't go the standard dark vibe by using these overly typical sounds, like really spooky pianos or cheesy orchestral sounds, you know? Like there's some of that used here, but it's used in a really unique way. You know, there are intricate layers to these beats. Like some of them have light, scratchy sounds from a record player. You know, some of them have what sounds like radio static over them. You know, others will use things like bass lines through the beat that serve to give it this weird layer of darkness. But you know, like a few of these beats sound like something I could hear on a Throbbing Gristle album. You know, songs like Jump Scare or Black Xmas. Some of them, like All the Worlds Are Yours or Dores, remind me of Nurse with Wound. You know, even some of the darker, jazzier tracks like Doll Full of Pins or Golgotha give me this Cabaret Voltaire vibe. You know, and stuff like that is what I find so cool and interesting about this album. You know, the variety of darkness that we're seeing here. You know, the producers are using so many different flavors of what one might consider to be a dark sound that the album comes across as varied while still maintaining a central theme. And every beat lays down the perfect backdrop for what Woods and friends want to convey. So yeah, this album is unbelievable, absolutely incredibly well made, well crafted, just an amazing album. So yeah, if you have heard it and you want to leave some comments, I'd love to hear them. Drop them down there in the comment section. And like I said, please keep an eye out. I am definitely going to cover those other 3 albums that I'm really digging this year in a future wrap-up video that I'm hoping to do next week. Don't hold me to it, but hold me to it. Okay, so I will see y'all next time. As usual, thank you for living, thank you for loving, thank you for being you, and again, I'll see you next time. All right, peace out. Boy.